Coming up today, no progress in talks over a wage hike for North Korean workers at the Korean Kaesong Industrial Park. North Korea is set to charge South Korean firms a controversial late payment fee as a result. Arriving in Peru on the second leg of her South America tour, President Park Geun-hye vows to expand bilateral cooperation from trade into infrastructure, health and renewable energy. Plus, hundreds of people are feared to have drowned after a boat carrying up to 700 migrants capsized in the Mediterranean Sea. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Monday, April 20th here in Seoul. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Our top story this morning, inter-Korean talks to resolve the ongoing row over raising wages for North Korean workers at their joint industrial park in the north ended in vain on Sunday. South Korean companies with operations at the complex now face the prospect of having to pay the north a controversial late payment fee from today. Ji Myung-gil reports.
South Korea's Kaesong business owners are stuck in a dilemma. On the one hand, they're facing the prospect of having to pay a late fee if they don't comply with the North's demand for a wage hike. But on the other hand, they face the possibility of punitive measures from the South if they do. None of the 124 South Korean companies have paid the March wages yet, which are due April 20th. North Korea has threatened to impose a late fee of 15% per month if the South Korean companies don't issue the wage payments on time. South Korea says it will not accept the North's unilateral demand for a wage hike, saying Pyongyang violated a 2004 agreement that calls for two quasi-governmental committees to set the pay rate together. The two committees met for a second time on Saturday, but failed to reach a compromise. In addition, Seoul has warned the South Korean companies operating in the complex that they will face punitive measures if they concede to the North's wage hike demands. The two Koreas have been at odds over the issue since February, when the North unilaterally decided to raise the wage level by more than 5% to roughly $74 a month starting in March for the approximately 53,000 North Korean workers in the complex. Seoul's Unification Ministry says it is still sending messages to Pyongyang, asking to meet on the wage issue, but the North maintains that it's a matter for Pyongyang to decide. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Prime Minister Lee Wang-gu has made his first public appearance since allegations emerged of his involvement in a bribery scandal. He attended a ceremony on Sunday to commemorate the 55th anniversary of the April 19th revolution. He called for the creation of an atmosphere for achieving a peaceful reunification and upgrading the country's image by strengthening its democracy. The event was one of many festivities around the nation on Sunday, honouring the student democracy activists who led the uprising in the 1960 that resulted in President Lee Seung-man's resignation. Now, Prime Minister Lee is accused of taking bribes from a businessman who claimed to have given money to 8 heavyweight politicians before committing suicide earlier this month. The floor leader of Korea's ruling party says the government, the presidential office and the party itself are facing a crisis. Saenuri floor leader Yoo Seung-min said Sunday that the Korean people's trust in all three is evaporating fast. He stressed that his party, along with the presidential office and the government, must strive to be honest and sincere. Yoo said he would do his best to cooperate with the opposition party in passing a series of pending livelihood bills before the end of this month's parliamentary session. The government will soon finalise its decision on whether to salvage the sunken Soho ferry. The ruling Saenuri party made the announcement after holding a third round of working-level discussions with the government and the presidential office on Sunday. They plan to wrap up the technical review on the salvage project as soon as possible and announce the final results before the end of this week. The government had earlier released an interim outcome of the feasibility test results, which said the physical recovery of the ferry is technically possible. Families of the victims have demanded the ferry be hoisted out of the water to determine the exact cause of the disaster and find the bodies of 9 passengers still missing. President Park Geun-hye is currently in Peru on the second stop of a 4-nation tour of South America. Over the next few days, the Korean leader will look to strengthen cooperation with Peru beyond the usual trade and investment ties. Our presidential office correspondent Choi Sun filed this report from Lima.
Amid much fanfare over her visit, President Park Geun-hye is scheduled to have a summit meeting with Peruvian President Ollanta Humala on Monday.
Even before her arrival, local media reported on President Park's visit and the future of Seoul-Lima relations.
In an interview with Peruvian daily Gestion, President Park said she recognized how far the two sides have come since implementing their FTA in 2011. She said it's now time for Seoul and Lima to talk about cooperating on infrastructure, healthcare, and defense. In fact, there is speculation about whether her latest visit will pave the way for Korea to export its combat aircraft, including the FA-50, to Peru. Korea Aerospace Industries is currently trying to sell the FA-50 to Peru. During the president's visit, a ceremony will be held to mark the first local production of a Korean trainer jet, the KT-1P. Earlier, President Park spent her final day in Colombia, offering her thanks to Colombian veterans who fought in the Korean War. Colombia was the only South American country to send troops, and nearly 700 Colombians were either killed or injured in the battle.
Siempre nuestra amistad existirá, crecerá y la recordarán los hijos de nuestras dos naciones.
She spoke one-on-one with a veteran whom she had met 40 years ago during her father's presidency, and with another veteran who had sent a letter saying he wants to visit Korea. President Park also met with Koreans who live in Colombia, praising their support for the veterans and their families. She added that as the two countries boost cooperation, there will be more opportunities for them in Colombian society. Choi Sun, Arirang News, Lima.
Hundreds of migrants are feared to have died after a fishing boat packed with as many as 700 migrants capsized off the coast of Libya. The Italian Coast Guard says that so far only 28 people have been rescued and 24 bodies have been retrieved. The disaster is expected to be one of the worst seen in the Mediterranean Sea and increase the number of migrants who have died in the sea en route to Europe since the start of the year alone to more than 1,500. Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi says it was a European tragedy and has called for an extraordinary EU summit on the migrants issue. A shocking new video purportedly released by the group that calls itself Islamic State claims to show its militants slaughtering around 30 Ethiopian Christians in Libya. A militant speaking in the 29-minute-long video portrays Christians as crusaders out to kill Muslims. The video shows about 15 men being beheaded on a beach and another group of the same size being shot in the back of their heads in scrubland. Ethiopia says it's unable to confirm whether its citizens have been killed by the militant group, but condemned the murders as an atrocious act. The killings were similar to past violence carried out by the IS group, which has expanded its reach from Iraq and Syria to chaos-ridden Libya. Economic growth in developed countries has strengthened, but some emerging nations are being hit by weaker commodity prices and exports. That was the warning issued by the IMF during its annual spring meetings in Washington over the weekend. According to IMF member nations, policymakers should take further measures to lift actual and potential growth as the global economic recovery remains moderate and uneven. They also said, with the US poised to hike interest rates, it is essential that moves towards policy normalization are accompanied by an effective communication of changes to reduce the risk of spillovers. There were few signs of a renewed flare-up in the so-called currency wars, but China's growing economic clout with its new development bank overshadowed the talks. The Korean government is pushing to launch a kind of wage cap system as part of efforts to help young people find jobs. Finance Minister Chek Young-hwan described it as a job-sharing program designed to boost youth employment while providing older employees with job security. Under the system, the wages of older employees would be reduced when they reach a certain age. The money saved would then be used to hire more young people. According to the minister, roughly 500,000 young people enter the job market each and every year, but less than half are hired for regular positions. Che also vowed to help companies cover potential losses associated with implementing the system. Now, slowing exports are raising alarm bells for the Korean economy that is so heavily reliant on exports for growth. The downturn has prompted the government to take measures to get exports back on track, particularly to China, Korea's biggest trading partner. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Korean exports slipped for a fourth straight year last year. The Korea International Trade Association says the country's exports increased a mere 4.4% in 2014, a stark contrast to the figure recorded in 2010, when exports increased 22% from the previous year. In particular, exports of petrochemical and oil products, LCD panels, and telecommunications equipment fell in 2014. The agency says the fall is mainly due to the slow global economic recovery, the drop in oil prices, and increased competition from China. Since Korea is highly dependent on exports for growth, the downward momentum has raised alarm bells for the local economy. In response, the Trade Ministry unveiled measures earlier this week to help boost exports, particularly to China, which currently takes up a quarter of Korea's export volume. Under the plan, the ministry says it will support local firms seeking to expand into China's e-commerce market. It's also planning to provide consultation for exporters of consumer goods, such as cosmetics, health and beauty products, and dietary supplements, to help them increase their footing in the Chinese market. However, it remains to be seen whether the measures will be effective. During the January to March period, exports dropped nearly 3% from the same period last year to $133.6 billion. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
The amount of electricity produced from nuclear power plants in Korea has surpassed 3 trillion kilowatt hours. The state-run Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power Company said it reached the 3 trillion mark at around 1 a.m. on Monday, Korea time. The country began its first commercial operations with a nuclear power plant in the southeastern port city of Busan all the way back in 1978. 3 trillion kilowatt hours is equivalent to the amount of electricity that the entire country consumes in 6 years and 3 months, and what the entire global population uses in roughly 6 weeks. Currently, Korea has a total of 23 nuclear power plants in operation and plans to increase its total nuclear capacity twofold over the next 2 decades. Golfer Kim Seyong has clinched her second career LPGA Tour victory, boosting her chance of winning the Rookie of the Year honours this year. Powered by a pair of stunning shots in the final stretch and closing with a 1/73, the rookie raised the cup at the Lotte Championship in Hawaii, becoming the first Korean LPGA golfer to win 2 tours this year. En route to the crown, Kim defeated the field crowded with her fellow Koreans, including world number 3 Park Geun-hye. The rising star took home the $270,000 purse, moving to the top of the money list with $700,000. So far this year, 5 Koreans have combined for 6 victories in 9 LPGA tournaments. Korean scientists have created a promising new tool for detecting cancer. It's an advancement on a common procedure, the endoscopy. That's where a doctor inserts a camera attached to a long, flexible tube into a body cavity. This new system eliminates a few steps in cancer diagnosis. Our Park Seyong has a story.
This probe, made of optical fibers, is scanning a suspicious lesion inside a patient's body. Suddenly, cancer cells appear on the screen. Unlike conventional endoscopes, this new probe attachment developed by a team of scientists from Seoul National University can identify different types of cancer. Doctors can catch cancer in its early stages by closely analyzing molecules such as protein or DNA. But for an accurate diagnosis, they have to be able to see the complete set of molecules that make up different types of cancer.
The endoscopic system was recently equipped with fluorescent signals, but we could only examine one molecule at a time. Now the new technology allows us to not only identify the location of the molecule in the body, but see multiple molecules at once.
To find a tumor, the probe releases nanoparticles which attach to cancer cells directly on the surface of a suspicious area. It uses advanced fluorescence and electromagnetic technology to track, take images of, and identify the cancer cells. The small device inserts easily into any conventional endoscope. This means doctors will be able to detect early-stage cancer during routine endoscopic procedures. The team's work was published in the journal Scientific Reports, and the scientists are working with local hospitals and manufacturers to prepare the device for clinical use. Park Geun-hye, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broome. Have a great day and a nice start to the week. And thanks as always for watching. We hope to see you at the same time tomorrow. Goodbye.